Aunt Ruth, you excited for the Accountant sequel? I'm not holding my breath, but I have some hope. Well, let's look at the first one, and I'll focus mainly on autistic representation, but I do want to point out that our main female character very oddly trusts our main character with little reason to do so, then very quickly exhibits quite strong romantic behaviors towards him despite him doing nothing to warrant it. So I guess she's the kind of girl who gets romantic for a stranger who kills people. I mean, if I were in that situation, I wouldn't just mindlessly trust a man who had killed a bunch of other men. I mean, I know those other men were trying to kill me, but have you watched spy movies? Like, he could be a bad person too. But there I go ranting already. Well, I guess it's good that they're showing that an autistic person can be both romantically and physically attractive. Should have been handled in a way that didn't utilize the trope of women just default falling for whatever man walks into their life and won't leave. But yeah. Fair. What about the autistic representation? Well, let's start with the big one. Ben Affleck is not autistic. Come on, does an actor have to be? Hear me out. Having a movie star play an autistic character can help draw more people to watch the movie and thereby spread autism awareness and acceptance when it is a chosen champion situation. If I, as an autistic writer-director, wanted to hire Ben here, I, having lived autistic experience, could ensure equitable representation of my story, my identity. Do you think the writer here is autistic? No. The director? No. Now, I could find no information identifying any of the decision makers on these films as being autistic. So here is yet another representation of us where we are not decision makers, nor are we benefiting financially, nor benefiting in our careers from this creation. Nothing about us without us in charge. No exceptions. Without that, you cannot make something that is equitable. Period. But maybe they hired a consultant. Would it be okay to make a movie where the core element of the story was the struggles of being a black person, yet the writer, director, producers, and leadership team were all white? Eesh, no. Which is why they got so much of this movie wrong. Not all of it, and I'll get to that. And I'm hoping the sequel has done better. But listen, abusing your autistic kid does not give them superpowers. What? Okay, I can see that, but exposure therapy. All the scientific studies on this show that exposure therapy makes autistic sensory sensitivities worse. Oh. Yeah, and here we have yet another autism representation that uses the savant trope. I mean, there are autistic savants. Do you know how many? I'm not going to get into the inaccuracies of many of these studies, but even the higher estimates say that 10% of autistics or less. And you know what's funny? Other studies say that half of the people who are savants are not autistic. What? Funny how media shapes our perceptions, isn't it? Look at the biggest TV shows and films with autistic leads of the last 10 years. There's not many to begin with, but The Accountant, The Good Doctor, Extraordinary Attorney Woo, Atypical, Everything's Gonna Be Okay as We See It. In that list, half depict savants. And yes, there are others that weren't as popular, but if we add those like Ezra and X plus Y, we're still at 50%. But what's funny is in the new sequel, they have another neurodivergent character, and guess what? No. She's a savant. So the prevalence of savant characters is not very good for awareness or acceptance. Nor is Ben's character saying he has high-functioning autism. They didn't. And his description of his own autistic traits doesn't sound like how most autistic people I know would describe their autistic experience. It seems like it was written by an autistic person reading a medical description. Which it was! Dang, yeah, like hire autistic writers. If you go back and watch the interviews from the first film, you'll hear the director and Affleck talking about research in the film and how they observed autistic people and got a lot of influence from parents of autistic kids, and they got feedback from Autism Speaks. Oh, that's like hiring Kanye West and Candace Owens as consultants. Right? So not getting feedback from actually autistic people. So it's no wonder that the counselor at the clinic, who is supposed to be this pro-autism, is very much pushing intelligence supremacy. Like, finding their intelligence is what will make the autistic person have more value and be valued by both their parents and society. Ick. Now, I don't know if the filmmakers addressed these issues for the sequel coming out, and maybe they have. I've heard rumors that it could be. But from what I can tell, there's still no autistic decision makers behind the camera. And furthermore, what's interesting is I've watched a bunch of interviews for the sequel with a lot of the main stars and the director, and I could not find an interview where autism is ever mentioned. Now, there may be some, but where are they? Okay, that's a choice. You had said you had some positive thoughts on the original. Affleck did one of the best performances of an autistic person playing an autistic person that I've seen. He was a little too robotic at times, but overall, he was pretty good. Oh, well, I guess that's good. Additionally, we get to see a capable autistic person who is capable outside of their savant. We also see an autistic person showing empathy and having relationships, including romantically. All right, so how would you rate the original Accountant? I wouldn't call it the most authentic autism representation on film, and how that phrase has been associated with it, I have no clue. Now, from my perspective, if I were to rate how positive of an impact this film can have on society, what I call the equitability scale, I'd give it a 3 out of 10. It was kind of fun to see an autistic person be a badass. But on the harm scale, as in how harmful was the depiction on society, it's reinforcing a lot of stereotypes and misconceptions and introducing new ones, and not having autistic representation behind the camera. So I have to get this a 6 out of 10, with 10 being the most harmful. Hey, not the worst we've ever seen. Hoping the sequel does much better, but still not gonna hold my breath.